Thank you for joining us tonight. We are allowing more people to join the call. The Congressman will begin in just a couple of minutes.
Good evening. This is Congressman Mike Haridopolos. Thank you so much for taking your valuable time to share with me tonight. I am still up in Washington, D.C., and yes, it is cold up here. And I was just home last weekend, and of course, it was chilly back home as well. On Monday, we're actually with the Secretary of War visiting Blue Origin and, of course, the Artemis mission, which is now a month away after the initial scrub of that launch. But we are excited to take calls tonight and make sure we answer as many questions as possible in the next hour. So, again, thank you for joining us. I wanted to recap 2025 and then take as much time as we possibly can to answer questions. First, it is an incredible honor to represent the Space and Treasure Coast, and we have done everything possible to make sure that we make promises and keep those promises. As you know, as I ran for office for the first time in 2024, we made 5 basic plans and goals. One is to make sure we secure the border, and the good news is, as you know, it is secure. Second, we wanted to bring down things like gas prices. We've seen those fall as well. Third was making sure we stopped the largest tax increase in American history. We did that back in July by not only stopping the tax increase, but also reducing taxes on overtime, tips, and Social Security. Fourth, we wanted to make sure the lagoon was something that was so vital, which I talked to so many people about, not just in 2024, but in years past. We have secured over $14 million additional dollars for the lagoon. And finally, space. Space has been a huge issue for Floridians, and a few years ago, we relied on the Russians to get their own space station. Today, we are once again leading the world. Approximately 100 launches last year alone. It is a remarkable time as it is literally taking off. And so I am proud to represent the Space Coast and push that forward. And in the big bill that we passed in July, remember, we put $10 billion additional dollars into NASA to make sure we are number one in space. And, of course, we also made sure that NASA was fully funded despite some concerns earlier in the year. Constituent service is also a prime thing that I work on. You can always call 632-1776, call our office. We helped over 2,000 residents in our district last year, returned over $12 million, whether it be Social Security, VA, or other programs. Again, my job is to serve you. When you have challenges with the federal government, I want you to call our office and make sure we handle some of those challenges. As you also know, I'm the chairman of the Space Committee, and that is an important committee because of the areas I just discussed. And we are making sure that those public-private partnerships are strong and they create new jobs and opportunities. And now thousands of people are hired not just by NASA, but also by the private sector in our home community. So I could not be more happy to have that opportunity. And finally, we wanted to do everything we can to lower the cost for all Americans. As you know, between 21 and 24, there are very high inflation rates. The good news is that inflation rate is dramatically down under 3%. Of course, the stock market is up, meaning your retirement fund is much better off than it was a year ago. Also, interest rates have inched down. So I feel like we're moving in the right direction, but we still have a heck of a lot more to do to try to make things more affordable in the USA. So let's get ready to start tonight. The way that you want to ask a question, you just press *3 if you want to ask a question. You press *6 if you want to subscribe to our newsletter. We put that out every week because you deserve to know exactly how I vote every week. And stay on the line after the call if you want to leave a message, and we do our best to follow that up. So we are excited to get started tonight. Our first question is from Stacy from Palm Bay, and it said, I've heard you helped thousands of people with issues involving the federal government. What kind of help are constituents actually getting? And what should they do if they're stuck in these federal bureaucracies? Well, again, this is an important call. Again, 632-1776 is our number. We have many people there who answer these challenges. What we have seen as the most common question on that are VA issues. You may have served in the military and you're having challenges making sure that you get your benefits. If you have Social Security backlog cases, that is also very common. And so it's absolutely vital you call in and we help out with those types of challenges. It's something we take great pride in. And again, over 2,000 people were helped back in 2024, and we've returned over $12 million along that way. Our next question is coming in from on the topic of Minnesota fraud. Let's see. We've heard a lot about fraud in government programs. What is going on in Minnesota, and why should Floridians care? Well, with the issue with fraud in Minnesota, it's been an absolute debacle. It is sad and scary when you see some people scamming the American government system. And fortunately, we have been very aggressive in attempting to turn that around. The estimates right now show that billions of dollars have been lost in these fraud cases, and it's the reason why we need to be aggressive. And we've also found it might not be just in Minnesota, but in states like California, even Wisconsin, where they have a lot of these challenges. And so the president and his team have been very good about getting out there, because you work so hard to earn taxpayer dollars, and it's just absolutely unacceptable that these type of things are happening. And as we add more transparency to our government system, I think that's how we can turn it around. Next, we have John from Vero Beach. He asked, how does border security affect states like Florida that aren't on the border? Well, the good news is there again, we have all but secured the border. The border crossings are down 93%, and the border crossings released 0 illegal aliens in the last 7 straight months, meaning they did not find a single person trying to do that. The drug seizures are up more than 10%, so that some of those deadly drugs like fentanyl don't come across our border. And so we are doing the right thing. We found out we didn't need to actually change the law. We simply needed to enforce the law after 10 million people had entered our country in the last 4 years. And a lot of those, unfortunately, were not people we even knew about, meaning that most of these people crossed the border with not legitimate identification. We did not know about their criminal or mental challenges when they came over the border. And, of course, so many kids, boys and girls alike, were sold into sexual slavery called human trafficking. By securing the border, we have now turned that around, and we are making sure that tens of thousands of people are not only sent back to their home country, but we're specifically going after criminal illegal aliens. Our next question is coming from Ruth. Ruth's question. Oh, okay. Ruth, if you can tell us your question, I would love to answer your question. Go ahead, Ruth.
I'm just concerned about the growing Sharia law infiltrations throughout the country. Is there something that you're doing for Brevard and the Treasure Coast?
Well, thanks for asking the question, Ruth. What we are doing with Sharia law is that this is a real issue. This is not made up. This is not an internet conspiracy. We are seeing in communities, especially in Texas and the Southwest, that groups are trying to undermine the United States Constitution. We all took an oath as a member of Congress to uphold the Constitution of the United States. And so what I have joined is what's called the Anti-Sharia Law Caucus. I believe that the people have the power of freedom of religion, but Sharia law is literally something that would be in replacement of our Constitution, and that would, of course, be treasonous. So I am a part of this Sharia Law Caucus. We have a piece of legislation put forth by Chip Roy out of Texas, and we are a sponsor of that bill, and we are on that caucus, and we cannot allow it to happen. There were some concerns just a couple weeks ago, a potential group coming into Indian River County. I had our team go out and investigate, and it was basically, we were told, at least at this point, as they went to the planning and zoning meeting, that there was not that group coming in, but we are keeping our eyes open. We do not want to undercut the Constitution of the United States, and what we need to do, everything in our power to do, is to make sure this Sharia law does not undercut this, because it takes away fundamental rights, especially from women, and that is unacceptable in my mind. Next, we have a question from Loretta. Loretta, you're up.
Oh, hi, Mike. This is
Hi,
Loretta. Hi. Mike, I was wondering why the shingles vaccine and the RSV vaccine are not covered by the Medicare Part A and B, that you have to have Part D in order to have that covered, because most of us who are seniors now really they can't afford that $350 cost to have that done, and we're the ones that need the vaccine. So I didn't know if any changes on that coverage could possibly be done.
Well, that's a great question, Loretta. I appreciate you asking. I think that's something we are more than willing to look into. If you wouldn't mind leaving with our team your phone number, we will look into that issue and see why that is not a part of the basic plan. You'd have to have a Part D coverage. Again, you earned Social Security, you earned Medicare, and we want to make sure that people who have earned those programs get the best health care possible. And some people like traditional Medicare, some people like Medicare Advantage. So whatever you choose, we want to give you that option, because remember, these are not welfare programs. You work your entire life to earn those benefits. And so please make sure you leave your number with our team, and we will make sure that we get back to you about why that program is set up in that design. As you know, this was set up during the Bush years many years ago, and we want to see how we kind of play that out. But great question, Loretta. And again, thank you for your long time, obviously, work, because with that, the only way you qualify for Medicare is because you worked real hard to earn those benefits through the years. Next, we have a question from Terry from Vero Beach. Terry?
Hi, Mike. Appreciate you representing us. My question is in relation to the SAVE Act. I know that there's a lot of information in the news right now about it. Everything that I'm hearing says that we have to have 60 votes. I don't see it that way. Everything else that I read kind of behind the scenes is that we could do it with 51 votes, but everybody wants to throw out the 60 vote idea, but that's not the way that I read where we are right now. So my question is, for you representing us, is that a number one priority for you? And am I misunderstanding, or is there something that I'm missing in regards to the number of votes that it takes to get this pushed through?
Well, fair question, Terry. And first and foremost, as you know, we in the House have been pushing forward the SAVE Act. We think it's the right direction in which to go. It is just common sense. Only Americans vote in American elections. The simple idea that you should show photo ID if you come to vote. It is common sense. If you want to board a plane, buy alcohol, God forbid, cigarettes or something else, you need to show identification. And it is incredibly insulting that people would say that it's somehow Jim Crow laws by asking for a photo ID. After all, the foundation of the Republican form of government that we have, constitutional government, is the idea that one person, one vote, and that Americans decide the future of their country. And so we are promoting it. And it's not just Republicans. Democrats overwhelmingly support the idea of photo identification as well. I think it's imperative. I'm a proud co-sponsor of that bill, because I want to make sure that everyone trusts and believes in all of our elections. Too much of this commotion has been going on. To answer your question on the second part of that, 51 or 60, as you know, and when we did budget reconciliation, you just need a simple majority. But when you talk about passing a law, the United States Senate has at this point the idea that you have the cloture law. If you don't get 60 votes, there can be cloture. That basically means filibuster. And I think there's got to be one of two steps taken by the Senate. One is make the people who want to stop this law, make them talk on the floor to try to stop it. If they want to filibuster, don't just accept it, go to the floor. We need to go out and win the debate that photo ID, the SAVE Act, Americans only in American elections work. And if necessary, if we see that they are trying to impede fair and free elections by stopping this act, then maybe the Senate needs to look at the idea of getting rid of the cloture law and going to a simple majority, has been discussed for years. I am very concerned about the issue, but I've always said that you control what you can control, and what we have done is just that. We have passed the SAVE Act. We think it's the right thing to do, and I pray that we continue to move in this direction of free and fair elections and making sure that the people who vote are only those who are truly eligible to vote, not people who are gaming the system. Next, we have Patricia. Your next question for us, Patricia.
My question is about Steve Bannon's calling for Homeland Security agents to flood polling places during the midterm elections, and President Trump's calling for taking the elections away from the states and giving it to the federal government. What is your position on both of those ideas?
Well, Patricia, that's a fair question. I don't listen to Steve Bannon much, so I don't know that answer. I don't know what his pushes for it. I think the best way that we solve that problem first, as far as voting is concerned, is what I just talked about with the previous question. And that question is, let's make sure that the people who vote in American elections are Americans. And so I strongly support the idea of photo identification. I don't think you need to flood the zone with border patrol at voting stations. I don't think we should intimidate people per se, but there should be people making sure that the person who is coming to vote is truly that person. The last thing you want to do is like the gaming of the system they do in the old political boss days where people would go from one polling site to another. So let's have photo ID, verify, using the common traits that are used by businesses today to make sure that the person who they say they are is who they say they are. And then the second part of this nationalizing election, I'm not sure about the phraseology, but let me just say this as a history teacher. Let's be clear here. Congress has long had a say on voting rights. As you know, in Article 1, Section 4, it outlines that states will conduct elections. But it doesn't mean Congress should be mute on the subject. I'm going to give you a little history lesson just from my old days at Brevard Community College. Back in 1845, we established that we all vote in November, after the harvest, before winter. That was a Congress law, not a constitutional amendment. And let's not forget the 15th, the 19th, the 24th, the 26th Amendment all had to do with, of course, changing voting laws in the United States Constitution. And finally, 1965, as you probably know, the Voting Rights Act, which changes were made so that African Americans were not deprived from the opportunity. The HAVA Act, or the Help America Vote Act in 2002, was another one which expanded laws. And again, that was the Congress acting alone. You finally have the 1984 law, I believe it was, where you allowed for handicapped citizens to make sure they have access to vote. And so this common sense that Congress has long had a say on setting up laws, and really the only thing that we're looking for in this SAVE Act is common sense. Let's make sure that the person who say they wanted to vote is an American citizen, and that when they go to check in to vote, that they show their voter ID so we can verify that. Because whether it be the 2016 election when Democrats believed that Donald Trump's election was fraudulent, or when Republicans were upset by the 2020 results, the way that we get rid of this commotion is that we have the confidence that our voting systems are working properly. And it's always been a role of Congress, whether it be Republicans or Democrats, to make sure. And so I don't consider it nationalizing election. I consider it the Congress doing its part to make sure we have free, fair elections. After all, again, it is the foundational element of a constitutional democracy. Our next question is from Mike in Palm Bay. Mike, are you there from Palm Bay? Okay. That they said this question was, we've heard a lot about what can we do to stop waste and fraud without hurting people who truly rely on these programs? So in this case, this is a classic example. I am not an anarchist, let alone a person who believes in no government. or a libertarian. I'm a Republican. There's a role for government. There is plenty of money in our government system to help the truly needy, whether it be handicapped or persons who have different disabilities. We have a role for government. And what's so frustrating is when people prey on the system, they lie, cheat, and steal in order to take from the system, and they take from others. Medicaid was a classic example where a lot of people are defrauded the system, and it has denied access to a lot of other people. I think that we need to make sure there is, of course, the idea of accountability, common sense, that people come in and they are truly qualified, and we want to help those people who are in need. But what happens when you see these fraud programs across the country, they're taking away services from people who truly need it and have qualified for it. And again, there's two types of programs. One is a welfare program. That's where people get it regardless of income. And of course, as the earlier question said, there's also programs that people have earned, that being Social Security or Medicare. And we want to make sure that we eliminate fraud there as well so they can get the services they truly have paid for. Remember, press *3 if you want to ask a question, and *6 if you want to subscribe to our newsletter. Our next question is from Chris in Vero Beach. Chris?
Yes, Mike. I contacted your office numerous times on the subject when it came to the insurance situation with expiration of the ACA credits and insurance affordability. And obviously everybody agreed to, reopen the government because it was going to be addressed, and I've heard absolutely nothing about that.
Well, fair question, Chris. Where I stood on the what they call the ACA tax credits or Obamacare, let's just be clear, everyone knows this, is that these tax credits don't go to you, the individual. These tax credits go directly to insurance companies. And as we all know, that after all, the business of insurance companies to make their shareholders happy, it's almost an incentive to deny you care, because the more money they deny, the more money they're already getting paid by the government in ACA tax credits. The other part that was so scary is there's things called phantom enrollment. This is where between 30 and 40% of the people who are on Obamacare were phantom enrollees, meaning that somehow their name was given to the insurance company. The insurance company started to collect money from the government with these ACA tax credits, and yet there was no actual services being provided, meaning the insurance company pocketed it all. And then the other thing that we need to be conscious of is that about half the people on Obamacare pay zero in premiums. And so those zero premiums were another way in which it's harder for us to track fraud, because it could be part of that phantom enrollee. I believe that we need to do everything we can to make the system more accountable, but also more accessible and transparent. And so I would like to see these tax credits not go to insurance companies. I want to see them go directly to the people in need so that they can get the health care they deserve. And then the second part of that, Chris, which again is a great question, it's something we're working on, is that, remember, there's about 22 million people on ACA credits that go directly to insurance companies, but there's 160 million people who pay full freight for insurance. And the average cost there is between $1,500 and $2,000, if not more, a month. And so when people are on Obamacare and they might be paying $200 or $300 a month or less, or in 50% of the cases zero, that's a heck of a discount. And we want to make sure if the people are getting that big a discount, and the other 160 million are people are paying full freight, that we make that system as accountable as possible. I know the Senate is working on a potential compromise. I am open to that compromise, but the number one thing we need to do is make sure that the people who are getting the benefits, meaning the insurance companies, that they're actually covering American citizens and providing health care. So we need to be very vigilant about making sure that, again, accountability is there. It is so scary to see the number of people that are gaming the system, especially as we've seen in this dramatic case in Minnesota. I'm just appalled by it. I think we all are, given how much we pay in taxes. The government, by the way, is open despite the Democrats fighting among themselves. Republicans did vote to keep the government open just this week, because after all, again, you paid for these services, and you deserve to get what you paid for. We have about 6,000 people on the line. I'm doing my best to answer as many questions as possible, and again, this is a real benefit to us. And again, if you want to sign up for our newsletters, you can find out how I voted. Sometimes you like it, sometimes you don't, but you deserve to know. So our next question is Dave David, from Rockledge. David, your question.
Yes, hello. Thank you for what you're doing and the Trump administration on what they're doing so far.
Well, thank you, David. What's your issue, my friend?
Well, the issue I'm having is I have an incurable cancer caused by the United States Army when I served back in 1979, and I'm trying for 100% disability. And I keep getting shot down because they just want to refuse the fact that I got it from one of their military bases on where I served. I had to hire an attorney. I have tons of evidence that shows that, yes, you do have the cancer and it was caused. But at the same time, the government on the VA side is very reluctant to hand out VA benefits to soldiers who served. And I just want to know why it's so hard to do that when we put our lives on the line and served our time for our country. We should be, treated a little bit more better than that.
Well, David, first of all, thank you very much for your service. Our own son, Hayden, serves in the United States military, and I understand the challenges you face every day. Of course, yours is a veteran myself. My son is a member of the Air Force. And I tip my hat to the men and women in the service. First and foremost, you remember to call my district office, 321-632-1776. We have a great team that works exclusively on VA benefits. After all, we represent Patrick Space Force Base, and it's vital that we look out for our veterans. And we had great success last year in returning millions of dollars to people who qualify. And the most general way that's so frustrating to me is that illegal aliens that came in and they're given all types of benefits, and here are our own veterans sometimes being denied care. And so it's absolutely vital that you please call our office, 321-632-1776. Work with our team. I'm so disappointed you had to hire a lawyer to get this far. Call our office. We have direct access to the VA. We will get that paperwork in, and we will follow up. I've got a terrific team working on it. It is so fundamental to me, not just for yourself as a veteran, but people who have earned benefits, whether it be Social Security, Medicare, or in your case, veterans benefits. They get everything that they were promised. You were made a promise when you joined the military that certain benefits would be given. I'm really sorry to hear what happened to you when you served in the military back in the 70s. And it'll be our responsibility to do everything we can to make sure your case is heard. And if you qualify for those benefits, you receive those benefits. It is essential to what public service is all about. So thanks for your question, David. Next, we have Nick from Merritt Island calling in. Nick, your question.
Hey, Mike, thanks for your service. Hey, so my question's on the Indian River Lagoon. I actually got to listen to you speak at the SpaceCom last week, and you know that Kennedy Space Center and Cape Canaveral Air Force Space Center is, I mixed that up, they're growing, right? And logistics is growing, and more commercial companies are coming. I know you're aware that we have the half-cent sales tax for the Indian River Lagoon cleaning, and that's up again for a vote coming up soon. And then the Florida Department of Environmental Protections was just approving a permit from Blue Origin to release more wastewater off of their plant there at the center to flow into the Indian River Lagoon. So my question to you is, do you think it's a great idea that we can try to get some federal dollars appropriated to build a wastewater treatment plant at the Space Center for these commercial companies to use so that water is not dumped into our lagoon? That basically is offsetting our personal interest where we're trying to clean it with our half-cent sales tax.
Yeah, well, it's a fair question. I'm glad you brought it up. Thank you. And as I mentioned at the start of our conversation today, the good news is that I'm trying to do my part up in Washington. We got record dollars out of Washington, D.C. in the budget we just passed this past week, over $14 million in addition to the money that's already been put in by taxpayers with a half-penny sales tax. $14 million goes to the programs in the Indian River Lagoon. Also, we wanted to highlight, as you probably saw last week, Blue Origin and the Florida DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, had a town hall meeting. We were there. We want to get those questions answered as well. I mean, the good news, of course, is that all these amazing jobs are coming in, but we want to make sure we handle them well. And finally, as part of the big bill that we got passed and part of the $10 billion that NAFTA got in the big bill passed in July, myself, Ashley Moody, Rick Scott, were able to get $250 million, $250 million to improve the infrastructure at Kennedy Space Center. And that included wastewater in the program because that was older, antiquated systems. And so I've been working with not only the county, but the city of Titusville to make sure we get those resources. The great news is new job and growth is coming to Kennedy Space Center like never before. But it's something that we need to keep ahead of the game. It's smart growth, so to speak. And I'm excited about the growth at NASA, but we can't be satisfied with it until we clean it all up. And I do see some progress with Lagoon. I think we put almost $500 million into it from our own tax base. I know that the state legislature is working on those programs, but that's my responsibility, and this is the reason why I've been in such close contact with Blue Origin as recent as Monday, and making sure that whatever permits are allocated, that there is a plan so we do not increase the pollution that's going into the Indian River Lagoon. Thanks for your question. Great question, and that's why we've been working so hard to get so many dollars here in Washington down to the district to help those taxpayers that are already fill in part of that bill. Our next question is from Meredith from Vero Beach.
Yes. Hi. I have actually two questions, but I'll just ask the one. When or how can the Social Security cost of living be done in real terms in the real world? I got a cost of living increase of $17, and Medicare price went up $20. So I'm going backwards now. The way they figure cost of living is not real, and there's got to be some kind of change.
Okay, well, that's a good question. Let me look into those different changes that took place. And this is, again, where, as you know, we're fighting from 4 years of big inflation. And the good news is the overall inflation number is down, but it's frustrating because those prices have been locked in for too long. That's why we gave tax cuts to people on Social Security. You should start feeling that Social Security tax cut. 85% of the people on Social Security will get that tax cut starting this year. And it's imperative to make sure you maximize that. If you have any challenges with Social Security, I want you to answer, call our office, 321-632-1776. And one of the reasons why the Medicare bill is high is because of waste and fraud. And I got to admit, I'm really impressed by RFK Jr., Dr. Oz, and others who are working to eradicate that fraud, because it's really taking away from the system and causing some price adjustments that are unnecessary. Great question, but please call our office and make sure you're getting that tax cut for Social Security, because remember, you earned it from a lifetime of hard work, and that's why it's essential that we reward work and make sure that people are able-bodied get into the workforce and not be a ward of the state. Remember, *3 if you want to ask a question, *6 to subscribe to our newsletter. Our next question is from Vanessa from West Melbourne. Vanessa.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
Hi. Good. Thanks.
Good. I have a two-part question. It's regarding voting. And my question is, you have a foreign student who is not a United States citizen, and they've been issued a photo ID. So can they go to the polls here in the state and perhaps federally and be able to vote? I'm hoping the answer is no.
Well, that's the tricky situation, and it's why I really want to make sure we pass the SAVE Act. You've seen in states like California and others, they're giving illegal aliens driver's license. And that undercuts, again, the idea that is so fundamental is only Americans vote in American elections. There are different databases that you can quickly check. Of course, credit card companies do it to us all the time to find out if you are who you say you are and if you're an American citizen or not. It's that simple. What these states are doing, there's 14 states that don't require a photo ID to vote, for one. And the second part of it, states are supposed to use that technology to confirm if you're an American citizen or not. And so We need to be very vigilant about it. But it's amazing to me that some in the Congress don't want to allow for a photo ID even to start, even though some people, even with a photo ID, can game the system, as I mentioned. This is, again, the most fundamental thing as an American history teacher, beyond being a congressman. Americans decide their own future. We cannot allow people who are not here legally to decide the future of America. And in addition to that, the fact that the benefits were given to people who came here illegally, as opposed to, like our earlier caller talked about, when they are veterans and they don't even get the full benefits they've earned. It's beyond frustrating. It's one of the reasons why I left the private sector to get back into political life, because it's that important to me. And that's why I think it's imperative. Please call U.S. senators and ask them to have a vote on the SAVE Act so that only the people who are legally allowed to vote go out and vote. And we use all the safeguards possible to make sure that the person voting is a citizen of the United States. As you can imagine, my name is obviously not Irish, it's Greek. It'd be a joke if I went to Greece and said, hey, let me vote. They would never let me vote. And in a national election. So all we're asking for, as I said in an earlier question, is Congress has every right to make federal voting laws. It's been done since our infancy, and they've even put it in the Constitution. And for people to say it's only a responsibility of the state, even though it's in Article 1, Section 4, they're simply wrong. Congress has always played a role, and we must safeguard the basics of our political institutions, and that is making sure it's one person, one vote. All right, next one is Michael from Indy Atlantic. Michael, you're on. Michael?
Hi, yes. I had a question. As a taxpayer, I see a lot of my money going for federal issues, and a lot of the sanctuary cities and sanctuary states are using my tax dollars. I don't really like that. What's being done to stop my tax dollars as a Florida resident going to these sanctuary cities and sanctuary states? And my second one, I've seen a lot of stuff in the news about this Ilhan Omar and questioning her right to serve in Congress, marrying a brother and lying on immigration forms. What's up with that?
Well, two fair questions. Sanctuary cities are undercut, again, the fabric of America. Here are people who are gaming the system, giving benefits to people who are not citizens and depriving their own. And then you have, which is the most despicable thing, is you have an illegal alien in a city. They commit a crime, and then these politicians who are given the honor to serve in their community will let those very criminals back on the streets in the name of politics. It's absolutely despicable. And it's one of the reasons why I do not think sanctuary cities should get dollars until they simply enforce the laws of the United States. And we had these two terrible tragedies in Minnesota that were ginned up by simply politics. These people put themselves in a very dangerous situation, because remember, these agents are simply going after people who should already be in jail. They should have been picked up at the jail. Instead, they have to go back into their community, and then these people, for whatever reason, are getting in the middle of that tense situation. Imagine putting yourself in the shoes of these agents trying to arrest a violent criminal, and you have protesters in the streets. You can only imagine the stress level and the difficulty. It's what happened there is just a tragedy, but we need to simply do the thing that the rest of the country is doing. Local enforcement, law enforcement, keeps the peace and allows these bad people to be taken off the streets. It's fundamental, and for these politicians in Minnesota to allow this to happen is just a travesty, to say the least. And I hope that they can turn this around and we can lower the rhetoric and do what the rest of the country is doing, which is allowing law enforcement to simply go forward and do it right. As far as Ilhan Omar, I've seen some of the language as far as her unique financial disclosure, the fact that some of these businesses simply don't exist. I do know that they're looking at it right now in the ethics committee. I hope that all this can be publicized, and I think she should go up and justify what she's done. What I tried to do as a new member of Congress is this. I said that I'm not going to trade stocks as a congressman. Before I was actually when I was a candidate, I said if elected, I will get rid of all my individual stocks. All I own are mutual funds, so that whatever the market's doing is kind of what I'll get or not get. And I think it's one way to focus on doing my job. I shouldn't be worrying about stock prices. I should be worrying about what you're paying for everyday items. And so I do not have to worry about the stock market. It's simply in a mutual fund. I do not trade stocks. And that's the direction I think we should all go so that we focus on the job at hand. And so what Omar is doing, it looks very suspicious. And if what I've seen on the internet is true, it's one where I think she would be removed from office if what has been implied is true. Next, we have a question from Marshall from Palm Bay. Marshall, you're up.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I appreciate most of what Trump and the Republicans, what you guys are doing last year or so. I think you're all doing pretty good. But the 36, our deficit, it's at 36 trillion, correct?
Our debt is at 36 trillion. Our deficit is a little over $1 trillion a year, which is unacceptable.
Yeah, and you know, the debasement of the dollar has not hurt me, okay, personally, financially. But I don't want us to end up like the Weimar Republic, and you know what I'm talking about, correct? What? I mean, you
Germany,
guys...
Yep.
Go ahead.
No, it was Germany in the 1920s. Remember, they had to bring a wheelbarrow full of money to pay for bread. It's insane.
Right. I mean, you know, I own silver, okay, so I'm not hurting, but there's going to be some people that don't plan, and I mean, it's out of control, and I just honestly, I know it might be painful for, you know, for people that work for the government not to get new office furniture every year, but I have worked for the state government, and I know honestly they run pretty lean. You know, when I worked up north in one of the states, Ohio, they were pretty lean, but something's got to be done. I mean,
well, I'm glad you asked that question. Let me do my best to answer that. First of all, again, it's why I ran for office. As you may or may not know, my past in the state Senate, when I was the leader of the Senate, we had a huge budget shortfall, and we had the option of raising taxes or cutting spending. We cut spending by over $4 billion on a $71 billion budget, and we made things work. There's a difference between what you want and what you can afford. Sadly, in Washington, they don't have a balanced budget amendment, and if I could do anything, it would be to have a balanced budget amendment because it makes us make the tough decisions. So in the meantime, what we have tried to do, and as you probably heard in the earlier calls, to pass a budget, you need 60 votes in the Senate, and there's a lot of folks who just won't make these tough decisions, and so you try to adjust it down as best you can. And then the second part of that equation is not just on the spending side, but the more important thing to me overall is how do we put more money in your pockets without causing inflation? And the way that we've done it is we think by giving tax relief to you, which you've done in passing the bill back in July, that puts more money in your pocket, and you just decide what's best for how you want to spend your money. It's the same reason why I want to see, quote, Obamacare change from a tax credit going to insurance companies to a tax credit going to your pocket so you can decide how to best spend those health care dollars as opposed to the insurance companies, which can just have an incentive to spend less and deny you care. So what we have done in a good sense, you've probably seen the economic growth. All the experts in Washington said our economic growth would only be like 2.5%. It's at over 4% growth. And so that is good for all of us. And you've also seen $17 trillion from foreign nations come into the United States because they know it's the best place to do business. And finally, we're reducing a lot of that waste and fraud as best we can because that's wasteful spending that goes right to our overall tax bill. And I just can't believe, as we're uncovering what's going to happen in the last 4 years, the fact that they would turn a blind eye to it, not just in places like Minnesota, but in places in Washington, D.C. as well. And that's why Rick Scott and one of our 2 U.S. senators have proposed a bill where all government spending goes online. So everybody, not just the Doge, looks at it. Everybody sees where the dollars are spent. It's what I did in Florida, and it made it where good ideas prosper and grow in the sunshine. Bad ideas wither and die. And so that's my push. We need more transparency. It's the same reason I set up a newsletter and I went and subscribe to it if you press *6. It's the same reason I'm on national TV, I think, almost every night. I want people to know what's happening in Washington, and it's why I love having teletown halls. We have, I don't even know how many thousands of people on this call. You need to hear directly from me, and that's so important to me. And it's the reason why we are so vigilant out there. And so we've had over 6,000 people tune in today, and it's still growing in our last few minutes on the line here. So you're right on target. That's why we need a balanced budget amendment and why we need incentives to save money. And the best disinfectant on bad spending is more transparency. Next, we have Susan in Indian Harbor Beach. Susan.
Along the lines of the DOEs and the fraud and wasteful spending, are we is President Trump revisiting taking away the federal income tax?
Well, as far as the federal income tax, as you know, it was authorized by Congress back in the Woodrow Wilson days, right before the 1920s. It's one what we have tried to do is simplify the tax system. As you know, we stopped the largest tax increase in American history. I do not see an elimination of the federal income tax, but what I have seen is that your deduction has pretty much been doubled with the new tax bill that we passed. For a family of four, I believe it's over $31,000 deduction. We're really trying to reduce the tax burden. My simple philosophy has been, you've earned this money. You deserve to decide how to best spend that money. When you send it up to Washington, D.C., they just don't care for it like you would personally. And it's the reason why we made this promise. If you earn tips or overtime, we want to reduce your taxes because you need it every day. If you earn Social Security, you need to go out and spend it how you see fit. It's just a common sense thing to do. And we've learned through the years that whether it be John F. Kennedy, a Democrat, or Ronald Reagan, a Republican, that when you provide tax relief to the working class, that they'll go out and do the things they need to do with it. And it's a great way to invest in America again. And I think because we've been a little bit more fiscally responsible than prior years, you're seeing interest rates are actually coming down. That's a great sign. And the fact that $17 trillion has been invested from overseas means that the rest of the world sees America as, once again, the shining city on the hill where you can invest with confidence and that there are more opportunities. And remember, the reason why we have an illegal immigration problem is because everybody wants to live here. And what we want to do is make sure that when people who want to come here, all we're asking them to do is play by the rules. I'm sick and tired of people who cut in line and in front of people, and then the government has the gall to subsidize those same people, and that's why we have cracked down on the border. You see almost zero border crossings, and we are deporting people who have come here illegally, and especially focusing on those violent or sexual offenders or drug dealers. And there's one guy in Minnesota got arrested 24 freaking times, and they let him out because he's a sanctuary city. Unacceptable. Next, we have William from Sebastian with a question. William, what is your question?
Hi. Thank you, Mike. Real quick, I want to thank you for your stand on not investing on individual stocks. Excellent. I appreciate that. The real question I have is, what can we do to help and promote more Americans to vote? We talk a lot about how we should keep from fraud and reduce that number of people, which is probably in the thousands, because we have thousands and thousands of cases of people being arrested for voting fraudulently, correct? So what can we do to promote, to help make sure that citizens vote? More of them.
Well, that's a great question. Thanks for taking the time. And again, I couldn't agree more that we need to get out of the stock business as an individual member of Congress. It's just common sense. The second one, as far as, and I mean, it's one of the reasons why I visit schools so often. I want to encourage young people to vote. And candidly, I'm inspired by these young kids that I visit in high school. As I was at Delora Middle School the other day, I was at Space Coast High School the other day. And these are young people who really want the best of American life. And this is why I want to inspire them to go out and get involved in government, because it's their money. In their lifetime, they're probably going to be spending between 35 and 40% of all they earn, and whether it be federal income tax, sales taxes, state taxes, let alone property taxes, and it's their money, and they need to know the issues. And it's the reason I took such pride in being an educator all these years. And it's also why I think it's vital that we pass the SAVE Act to gain that confidence again in American elections. I was just watching last night the number of Democrats back in 2016 who called President Trump a fraud for winning in 2016. And then in 2020, we saw a rehash on the other side. We need to regain confidence in American elections, and the best way to do it is to have simple oversight like any common sense company would do if they got a credit card transaction. They would make sure that the person making the purchase is that person. Same thing with voting. It is the fundamental foundation of America. And the fact that people would demagogue this to say it's not that is ridiculous. And it's why I believe in the SAVE Act, why I'm a co-sponsor of it. And when you have those kind of precautions in place, you don't have fraud, and we can gain confidence again. Whether your side wins or loses, at least you knew it was a fair fight. Our next question coming up is from Tracy in Palm Bay. Tracy.
Hi. Well, first I'd like to make a comment. Thank you for being a people person for the citizens, just like us, just like our wonderful president.
Thank you.
Now, thank you. Thank you for everything and holding these tele calls so that we know what's going on. Now, I'm quick because I know I don't have long.
Yeah.
Right. Now, as a humanitarian, right? Now, I know we'd all for ICE are doing a wonderful job, right? They're doing a wonderful job rounding up these illegal aliens and sending them off. And I'm all for that. But as an American citizen and humanitarian of this wonderful nation, it concerns me that they're not treated. I know they have no business being here, but there's situations I've read where, like there's this 38-year-old and he's special needs, and yes, he's illegal, he shouldn't be here. But then his father's concerned, and nobody's keeping him updated on what's going on. What's your stance on them? I mean, I also know the media likes to exaggerate. Look at our president. Now he's being persecuted through the social media. We know it's all BS. But what is your stance on that? They're doing a wonderful job, but with the being treated inhumanely as an American citizen and humanitarian of this wonderful nation, that does concern me. I don't know if it does other people, but it does me. What's your stance on it?
Well, first of all, thanks for the thoughtful question. And it is a tragedy when you see some of the horrific scenes in places like Minneapolis. I mean, it takes away from what America is. It's the last great bastion of freedom and opportunity in the world, and I'm a proud American. As you know, I'm a first-generation American. My dad was actually born in Athens, Greece, and it's when you see these kind of protests going on in Minneapolis, it breaks your heart. And I know, and I try to put myself in the shoes of other people and understand what they're going through. And you can imagine those people who are protesting in the streets. Some of them were doing it in the classic Martin Luther King fashion, which is honorable, which is peaceful protesting, not getting in the middle of a very, very delicate situation. And that's legitimate. It's your First Amendment rights. But what you've seen is that people have truly crossed the line in these places, not just in Minneapolis. If you recall, places like they firebombed the judges' chambers in Portland. We need just common sense. And believe me, as I now served in Congress for over a year, Congress is very responsive when legitimate concerns are brought up. But when you have 10 million people coming into the country, and then you have a situation where local authorities don't want to simply enforce the law, it is beyond frustrating. And so there are going to be some mistakes. And what happened in Minnesota was clearly a mistake, and it's something they're trying to rectify. But when you have politicians jetting these people up into a fervor, to say the least, a guy willing to bring a gun to what should have been a peaceful protest. So I believe in the Second Amendment we need to do everything we can to as leaders say, let law enforcement do their job. It's hard enough. Again, you can imagine being an ICE agent and you're trying to arrest a violent criminal, and here's someone trying to get in your way and cause a very dramatic situation and make it even worse. And so we're going to see some troublesome spots, but the best way to avoid those troublesome spots is to have local law enforcement do their part so that the federal agents can remove people who should have never been in the first place or had committed a violent crime. All right, our last question tonight is from Brent from Melbourne, Florida. Brent, what's your question, my friend?
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me on and inviting me. I appreciate it. I'll keep it short so that you could make your time frame. So it's to follow on about the sanctuary cities and states. I know federal dollars are going, and I believe there was a bill trying to be passed on the floor, and I don't know the status of that bill to cut federal funding from these, let's just say, states and cities that do not want to uphold the American or federal laws. That's my question.
Well, thank you, Brent. Again, I'll give you a little history teacher again. So if you recall the Voting Rights Act of 1965, the idea was if local governments or state governments deprive African Americans from the right to vote, they would take federal dollars from them. Here is a situation that is so fundamental. A person came here illegally. They not only came here illegally, they broke the law, and in some cases, horrific situations, murder, rape, you name it, child molestation. They were arrested, and yet in the name of politics, even some judges did this. In the name of politics, they were let back into community because of their political beliefs. These people broke the law on multiple fronts, in some cases physically harmed other American citizens, and they were let back out on the streets. And so sanctuary cities are simply wrong, and the federal government in the past has stepped in and said to local communities, including the Civil Rights Act of 65, and by the way, another one was if you didn't pass certain alcohol rules and raise the age to 21, they take away your transportation dollars. So what is so radical about saying to a community, if you refuse to abide by the federal government, we're going to take away your funding? That is a historic event. It has plenty of precedent in which to do that. And finally, if you're a state and you just choose to only enforce the laws that you believe in, that's what the Civil War was all about, let alone slavery. That states like South Carolina wanted to be selective and use what's called nullification. You can't nullify or disobey laws you don't happen to agree with. If you don't like the law, call a guy like me and try to change it. But you can't sit as a state do just the opposite. And so I think there's every responsibility to say if a state is unwilling to enforce the laws of the government, it can be subject to losing federal dollars. It's been done before with cars and alcohol. It's been done before with voting rights. Why shouldn't it be when people are committing fraud or refusing to keep violent criminals behind bars simply in the name of politics? I'm very comfortable doing that if necessary, and Minnesota needs to get its act together, as does other states, because they're depriving people of the ability to get their tax dollars spent the right way, and they're putting people at risk, because the fundamental thing about the government is protecting your life, liberty, and property, and clearly that does not happen in states like Minnesota. So I want to thank all the people who were kind enough to join me for the last hour. I've done my best to take as many questions. I don't even know how many questions you all asked. It felt like a lot. It's hard to talk for an hour straight. I hope my voice doesn't go completely out. But I want to thank you so much for who attended tonight, whether it's taxes, healthcare, border security, constituent services, sanctuary city. You name, you guys have covered it all, and I'm really grateful that you would take the time. Remember, this is not a one-hit wonder. You can always call our office at 632-1776, and if you need help with your VA benefits, Social Security, Medicare, you name it, do that, or simply stay on the line and leave a message. My office will get back to you in the coming days. as we move forward into 2026. Again, it's an honor to represent you in Washington, D.C. We are absolutely committed to reducing the costs that have been run up over the previous years. I'm glad we're making solid progress on interest rates, gas prices, border security, the Indian River Lagoon, the great links we've made with space. But there's a lot of things we can do, and I always want to be there for you. I am your voice in Washington, and it is truly an honor of a lifetime. So everyone have a great evening. Yes, it's cold in D.C. I miss being home, but I want to make sure we are serving you every single day. Have a great night, and we look forward to our next Kelly Town Hall.